Welcome back to another episode of the What We're Watching podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jeni, and today we're talking about Crazy Rich Asians.
Yay!
I love this movie so much.
I had never watched this movie all the way through.
Really?
Yeah. I saw it on a plane, I think that's why, and it got cut off. But I loved it. I was so happy to get to actually watch the whole thing this time.
Yay, that makes me happy.
Did you read the book? This is a book, right?
It is a book. It's a series by Kevin Kwan, and I haven't read it. I think I started reading it. I had an audiobook, like a free credit or something, and I listened to the beginning of it, which was very similar to the beginning of this movie. And I was super excited about it, and then I just saw a squirrel and moved on to a different book, which I do a lot. I usually have like 10 books that I'm juggling at once, and then I'll forget a couple. But I do want to read it, so if anyone has read it, let me know if I should dive back in.
Yeah, let us know if it's worth it. So the logline for this movie is, Rachel Chu is happy to accompany her longtime boyfriend Nick to his best friend's wedding in Singapore. She's also surprised to learn that Nick's family is extremely wealthy and he's considered one of the country's most eligible bachelors. Thrust into the spotlight, Rachel must now contend with jealous socialites, quirky relatives, and something far, far worse, Nick's disapproving mother.
So you liked it?
Loved it, yes.
I probably watch it once a year.
Okay, so this is a regular for you.
Yeah, it's a regular. I know we talked about doing it during our February month of romance and rom-coms, and it would have been perfect for that, but I'm glad we're doing it now because I'm not ready to give up the rom-coms yet.
Me too. And I'm happy to cover a movie that has a cast that's a little bit more diverse than the typical Y2K nostalgic rom-com that we cover, so this was nice. It was very refreshing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's just a product of the time of the early 2000s, but it's very hard to find diverse movies that are the ones that everyone's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've seen that one and I love that one.
I know. I'm sure there are ones we aren't thinking of. If you guys have any recommendations for movies, as always, send them to us on Instagram at What We're Watching Pod. But especially if you have movies with a more diverse cast that are ones that you just love, we would love to watch them.
Yes, please.
Also, I would say same goes for like diverse sexualities, because I feel like we cover a lot of typical rom-coms from the early 2000s, which are typically cis-het white people.
Yeah.
So if you guys have other recommendations, we would love them.
Yes, please. This movie is probably one of the newer movies that we've covered. Sometimes we like to cover movies as they come out in theaters if they're really big, but this one's from 2018. It's, like we said, based on the novel by Kevin Kwan that has the same name, and there's a few books in the series. And it's the first film by a major Hollywood studio to feature an all-Asian cast since The Joy Luck Club in 1993. So it took them 25 years to make another movie with an all-Asian cast.
That's too long.
Way too long. And this movie was such a hit. This just shows this is what the people want.
I know. Maybe that's in the works somewhere if there's multiple books. Because if this came out in 2018, we had a pandemic and then we had a big strike. So I would love if they did that, if they did another one of these, because it was so good.
Yeah, spoiler alert, they are working on a second movie.
Amazing.
But it's been stalled a few times and it's weird. Like, I can't find anything actually confirming it. It's been in this weird kind of limbo.
Okay. Well, I hope they go forward with it.
Yeah, me too. Crazy Rich Asians is directed by John M. Chu, who is also the director of that new Ariana Grande Wicked movie that's coming out.
Wow. That makes me even more excited for Wicked.
Are you excited about that one? I'm a little scared.
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm also nervous.
I feel like you're right, though. I trust his directing after Crazy Rich Asians, so I'm like, okay, well, maybe it'll be really good. I don't know.
Yeah. The only thing about it that makes me nervous is Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
Because Cynthia Erivo, I think that's her name, plays Elphaba, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like monstrously talented. She's really, really good. So I'm excited for her. But Ariana Grande, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll give her a chance.
Yeah.
The screenplay was written by Peter Chiarelli and Adele Lim. And it's actually funny. The screenplay is so good that Megan and I took a screenwriting class, like our very first screenwriting class that we ever took together. And we studied this script. Do you remember that?
I forgot about that. But we definitely did, yeah.
Yeah. And Adele Lim was hired as the co-writer to help the script be more culturally authentic. And she did these huge rewrites, including the famous mahjong scene at the end. But there was this huge pay inequity between her and Peter Chiarelli. She was paid $110,000 for this script, and Peter received $800,000 to $1 million for the script.
Two things. One, what Peter was paid feels like a lot for a screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's not warranted, but I feel like I've heard very few figures when it comes to screenwriting, just through research, and they're way lower than that. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And two, I wonder if this is something that's common when somebody is doing a pass for something specific. Like, I feel like we've heard from some of our teachers and some of the producers that have come to speak to our classes that sometimes people will rewrite with an eye for something they're particularly good at. Like, if you are really good at romantic dialogue or dialogue in general or relationships or something, you might get asked to do a pass on a script for that specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if this is common where there is a bigger screenwriter that gets, quote, bigger. I don't know if that's because it's their name or because they wrote the original script or something. And then as people do passes, even if they end up being big revisions, I wonder if that's what you're hired for, you get paid less. I don't know.
I don't like it, though.
I don't like it either. On its face, it looks bad.
Very bad.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers defended it, and they said that Peter had more experience. That's why he was paid more. Adele Lim decided not to return for the sequel for this, which I think is part of the reason why the sequel is taking forever. Not just the pandemic, but also this. They had to find a new screenwriter, basically. She did go on to write Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon, though. So she's still doing well.
Love that movie. Also, Awkwafina is the star of that movie.
I haven't seen that movie. I want to, though.
It's cute. You would like it.
I heard it's good. And then she also produced Joyride, which is the movie that came out last year with Ashley Park and Stephanie Hsu from Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I'm glad to hear that she's still doing stuff and that she didn't accept less than what she was worth.
Yeah, good for her. The way she left makes me feel like it definitely was not an okay thing, which makes me sad, but proud of her for leaving, I guess. This movie got a 91 on Rotten Tomatoes, which feels like it might be a high for us.
I think that might be the highest rated movie we've talked about.
Not that we care, but just interesting.
I love that. I love that for this movie. It is really, really good.
Yeah. Okay, should we talk about the cast?
Let's talk about Constance Wu, who plays Rachel Chu, the lead. Love. She did such a good job in this movie.
Such a good job. I actually had not seen her in anything else.
She hadn't been in too much before this. She was really known for the TV show Fresh Off the Boat. And then she also did the movie Hustlers, but I think that might have been after Crazy Rich Asians, but that's the J-Lo movie. There was this huge controversy with her and Fresh Off the Boat. I think I remember when this happened. She was basically canceled. It was when Fresh Off the Boat was renewed for a season 6, and she tweeted that she was upset and crying over it.
This just jogged my memory. Yes, I had no idea what you were talking about at first. I thought I didn't know about this, and then as you're saying that about her tweets, I remember, yeah.
And people were just so upset. She also commented on the Instagram post, I think, where they were announcing that Fresh Off the Boat was renewed for another season. She commented dislike on the post, which is unhinged behavior, honestly.
Unhinged behavior. Didn't it come out that she had a good reason, though?
Yeah. Trigger warning for sexual harassment and suicide. We're going to breeze over it, but maybe if that's not supportive to your journey, just fast forward 30 seconds to a minute. She was sexually harassed by a producer on Fresh Off the Boat. She originally said that she was upset about it being renewed because then she couldn't take on another opportunity that she was really excited about, which is fair. I think it's just not something that you would tweet about,
right?
Probably.
Yeah.
You just would privately be upset about it. People were lashing out at her and saying she was ungrateful and a diva and all of these different things. This one actress that she had worked with before DM'd her and told her she was a disgrace to the Asian American community. And Constance Wu was so upset by this that it prompted her to consider attempting suicide.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know all the rest of the story.
Yeah, one of her friends found her, took her to the ER. She's fine now, but she did take 3 years of a break to write a memoir, actually. She came out with a memoir in 2022 called Making a Scene. I think she's had 2 kids since then, 1 or 2 kids.
Wow.
But yeah, she took a little break, which I don't blame her.
No. Ooh, that's heavy. All of that. Like, to be canceled, I'm sure feels horrible, but then also to have somebody in your community say that to you is so hard. And then because it's actually because of this horrible thing that happened to her. And that, yeah, wow, that's a lot.
Also, for people to put you on this pedestal that you have to act a certain way because you have to show a positive representation of your community at all times seems like a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's a heavy weight to hold, to feel like you have to be representing your entire community with your actions. And you're not allowed to just, because even if she just didn't want to go back, like, she should be entitled to tweet that. People might not like it, but that shouldn't make her a disgrace to her community.
Right.
That's very heavy, yeah.
What a terrible thing to say.
Yeah. Wow, that makes me sad. I loved her in this movie so much. I thought she was so talented and so lovable, and I want to see more of her, so I wonder if she'll come back to acting.
Yeah, I think she has been doing stuff because then she recently did Lyle Lyle Crocodile. It's like a half animated musical kind of movie.
Okay.
And I think she's done some other stuff too. So yeah, she's definitely back in the game now, thankfully.
Okay. Maybe I'll read her book. Or maybe I'll go listen to the Celebrity Memoir Book Club girls talk about it.
I already did.
Oh, they did an episode. Good, good, good.
They did.
Of course they did.
And then we have Awkwafina, who plays Paik Lin, the best friend.
I love Awkwafina.
I feel like everyone knows who she is by now. She's an actress, a rapper, a comedian. And she had a really funny start to getting famous. I don't know if you knew this. She went viral on YouTube in 2012 for a song that she made called My Vag. And it's pretty much what launched her career.
Yeah, I knew this because you told me this. Like, probably one of the first times we hung out.
Really?
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
No, I think we were talking about how much we love her, but I didn't know that.
She's also done a ton of things since then. She has her own show called Nora from Queens. She did this wonderful movie called The Farewell, which is really heartfelt and kind of a different character than what she normally plays.
More dramatic. Would definitely recommend. She's also in Shang-Chi, which I love her in that movie. She's my favorite character in it. That is a Marvel movie. So if you're like superhero movie phobic, it's not for you. But if you like them even just a little bit, it's one of the really funny ones, and she's great in it. And then she's also in The Little Mermaid. She plays Scuttle, the new Little Mermaid, I should say. And then also Raya and the Last Dragon.
I thought this was really funny. When her grandma saw the trailer for Crazy Rich Asians, she said, "You're not even acting, it's just you." Which I do think she gets typecast a lot as the same kind of character, the comedic relief kind of character.
She does, but I love that because of everything I've seen her in, she's the most over the top in this movie. So to know that that's the closest to her actual personality makes me laugh.
And she is featured on the song Money in the soundtrack, which plays during the end credits. I think she's rapping. I can't remember.
Cool. And then we have Henry Golding, who plays Nick Young. And this was his first movie. I love him. He's so cute.
Yes. I can't believe it was his first movie. He was a TV host beforehand.
This is what he should be doing. He should be the love interest in a rom-com every time.
I think so too. I wonder if he is going to do more things or if he has done more things. I'm not really sure.
He was in A Simple Favor, which is the Blake Lively Anna Kendrick movie. He plays Blake Lively's husband in that movie.
Oh, okay. Was he good in that?
He was good. He wasn't a huge part. I guess he is kind of a big part. He's not one of the main leads because the 2 women are the main leads, but he was really good. Yes, I liked him.
He's just very likable. Apparently, the director of the movie really liked his Instagram presence.
I love that.
And encouraged him to audition. And he kind of had to coach him to be himself in the audition and try not to act. Because he's like, no, I picked you because I like you and who you are. And so just act like yourself and be natural.
What a way to land a giant role. I mean, wow.
He's also married to a yoga teacher, model, and fellow TV host named Liv Lowe. And they met in 2010, got married in 2016, and they have 2 kids.
Love. And then we have Gemma Chan, who plays Astrid. I also love her. She's in so many things. She's in Don't Worry, Darling, which we saw that together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Captain Marvel, Raya and the Last Dragon, Eternals, so much. Also in the MCU, she's a Marvel girly.
Yeah. She was originally asked to play the lead Rachel Chu, but she preferred the character of Astrid and thought the role was more intriguing.
Surprising. She would have been great as Rachel Chu, I think.
She has kind of a mysterious vibe to her, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like she plays the kind of mysterious character very well, where you're like interested in them because they're not super forthcoming, I guess. And Rachel Chu is very outgoing, and like we kind of know who she is instantly, and she wears her heart on her sleeve. And I could see why Gemma Chan wanted something a little more subdued and why that would intrigue her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. Have you ever seen the Netflix show called Jack Whitehall Travels with My Father?
That sounds really familiar.
I think I maybe made you watch it once.
Is that the one where he's traveling with his dad? It's like a documentary.
Yes. He's this English comedian and he has a much older dad. Like I think he was like an accident later child. And they travel around to like Thailand and stuff. And his dad is very posh and he gets him to stay in hostels and they try a bunch of food and it's really funny. So Jack Whitehall dated Emma Chan, I think for years and years they were together. And he makes comments in his show casually about how he thought he was going to marry her. And the breakup was like during filming, like between seasons.
Aww.
And he mentions it. And it seemed like this huge event for him. And at the time I was obsessed with the show. I didn't really know who she was. But now I haven't seen the show in a long time and I love her. So it's just interesting. So anyway, if anybody else has seen that show, they used to date.
Wow, that's really sad. And that's also 2 very different worlds colliding in my head right now. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Would recommend, especially my parents love this show. It's really funny. Our whole family loves it. So if you need something that's going to be a crowd pleaser, I think Brian and I have watched it with a bunch of different friends. Like, it's a very easy, funny watch.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
And then we have Michelle Yeoh, who plays Eleanor, the mom.
Obsessed. I love Michelle Yeoh.
Yes, same.
Mostly because she is the lead in one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie of all time, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I think that might be one of my favorite movies of all time as well. It might be the favorite. It was so good.
Me too. I think so too.
She's so good. If you haven't seen that movie by now, please go see it.
Mm-hmm.
She was also in Shang-Chi too, wasn't she?
She totally might have been.
She's been in a lot of things, but the only other really big thing from a while back that I know of is Memoirs of a Geisha. She's won a Golden Globe, an Oscar, a SAG Award, and an Academy Award for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Much deserved.
Very much.
And she just does a wonderful job in this movie. I am obsessed with her performance as Eleanor.
It was funny because I love Everything Everywhere All at Once so much, and I've seen it so many times, and she's such an endearing, kind of in a weird way, character that you root for in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So to have her go from that in my mind to Eleanor was like a weird swap.
Yeah, but I love the range for her. It's so good.
Me too.
And this is one of those ensemble movies where there are just so many talented cast members, and we are going to try and call them out as they come up in the movie if it's relevant. But just know that we could sit here and talk probably for an entire episode length just about the cast and how amazing they are.
Mm-hmm. I know there's so many, but we would be here forever. And we want to make this fun to listen to.
So let's get into the movie.
So the movie opens with a quote. It says, "Let China sleep, for when she wakes, she will shake the world." Napoleon Bonaparte. I thought this was kind of weird. I'm not going to lie.
Just the quote, or?
Yeah, it was just like a weird intro to this like funky rom-com. After the quote leaves the screen, we are in London in 1995, and we see 2 young children and 2 adult women walk into a really nice hotel. And the little boy is wiping his dirty feet everywhere, and they're all wet from the rain. And Mrs. Eleanor Young, played by Michelle Yeoh, asks the front desk guy about her reservation for the Lancaster suite, but he says he doesn't have it on file, and they tell her to go somewhere else, like Chinatown. It's like very racist and gross.
Mm-hmm. So she goes outside to a public phone booth and she calls her husband. And when she comes back into the hotel, the front desk manager threatens to call the police. But then Lord Calthorpe, who the hotel is named after, comes down and says that he just talked to her husband and tells the manager to get the suite ready. He also announces that he's selling the hotel to the Yeoh family from Singapore, which is Eleanor's family. This was such a crazy, amazing move. I love it.
I know. Love.
Like so petty and like wonderful.
I know. And so then we see a new scene where a young woman is playing poker with a guy in sunglasses and she beats him. And then all the lights come on and we realize they're actually in a college game theory class and she's the professor. And at the end of the class, we see this cute guy come in and like kind of make eyes at her from the back of the room.
And then we fast forward to New York in 2018 and the cute guy and the professor named Rachel, this is Rachel Chu, played by Constance Wu, they're on a date. And you can tell they're comfy together and they are in a relationship. And he asks her about going to Singapore for her spring break for his friend Colin's wedding, where he's going to be best man. And he wants her to meet his whole family since they've been together over a year now. And this cute guy is Nick, played by Henry Golding.
While they're on their date, we see some girls in a booth near them whispering. And then one of them walks by Rachel and Nick. And she like holds her phone up so that she can take a selfie with them in the background. And she starts sending the selfie around and everyone is texting her back freaking out that she saw the Nick Yeoh. And then people are Googling Rachel Chu to find out who his girlfriend is. And word almost instantly gets all the way back to Singapore that he's bringing Rachel to the family wedding.
I love this scene. I think it's iconic in this movie. Also, Kevin Kwan, the book's author, has a little cameo here.
Oh.
He's one of the people who gets the message and sends it to someone else.
Oh, cute. I love that.
Yeah. And then in Singapore, Eleanor is having a Bible study with her friends. And they say they heard Nick is bringing a girl to the wedding. And they ask if Eleanor even knew he had a girlfriend. And you can tell she's kind of taken aback by this. And she thought that he was going to come to the wedding by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Nick is still on the date with Rachel. This is only minutes, maybe even seconds later. And he gets a call from his mom who asks if he's bringing the girl he's seeing to Colin's wedding. And he says, yeah, how did you know we were literally just talking about that? And Eleanor goes, everyone knows. And then we see the girl who took the selfie leave the restaurant. And I think he says, oh, Radio 1 Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick tells his mom, yes, he is bringing her to the wedding. And Eleanor suggests that they stay separately. And we can tell that she doesn't like the idea that Rachel is coming.
Then Rachel picks out the dress that she's going to wear to the wedding with her mom. And we learn in her conversation with her mom while they're shopping that Nick never talks about his family and Rachel doesn't know anything about them. So we as the audience already know that there's a disconnect here between the reality of Nick's family and what she knows. And then Rachel's mom makes a comment to her that going to the wedding might be a bigger deal to Nick's family than she realizes. And her mom also says that overseas families are different from them. And Rachel says, how are they different? They're Chinese, I'm Chinese. And then her mom says in Mandarin, your face is Chinese, you speak Chinese, but here, she points to her head and mouth, you're different. And we see this come back throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm. Also, is it a red flag that he hasn't brought up his family to her?
It feels weird. Yeah.
Like maybe Nick is the red flag here, to be honest.
Oh, 100%. That is what I got from this whole movie, is that like Nick is in the wrong 100% of the time.
I agree. He did not prepare her.
He's just so cute, so he gets away with it.
Yeah, and he's nice.
Yeah.
So when they get to the airport, Rachel makes a comment that they're economy people when someone meets them at their car to check their bags into first class. Nick is like, oh, just go with it. And they get escorted on board, and it looks so fancy. They're greeted with champagne, and they get this little private suite, which would make any overseas flight just so nice.
So much better. I know. I want this too.
Nick says the tickets are just a work perk for his family. And Rachel says, so your family is like rich? And Nick says they're comfortable, which again, I hate that.
I know. I think she even says like, yeah, that's something a super rich person would say.
Yeah. And she thinks it's super weird that she had no idea he had money because he uses her Netflix password and he goes to the Y. And Nick says he thinks of his family money as theirs, not his. Which, okay, we'll give him that.
This is where I'm irritated because she says, I just want to know what I'm getting myself into because I'm coming to a different country to meet your whole family. And this is the perfect opportunity for Nick to, like, she's already stuck on the plane. She's coming. For him to, like, actually unload everything, and he doesn't. And it just makes me so mad. I mean, what he does do, which is nice, is he talks through his family tree, and we see, as the audience, we see everybody. So we see his cousin who works in movies. We see the one that works in finance, and so on, including Astrid, played by Gemma Chan, who we find out graduated at the top of her class at Oxford, has started multiple charities, is a fashion icon, and has the biggest heart of any of his cousins, according to Nick. And on screen, we also see her be very nice to a little girl who's being ignored by her mom, which is really cute. And then we see Astrid buy a very special and very expensive pair of pearl earrings, which are going to come back.
Araminta, played by Sonoya Mizuno, the bride-to-be, and her fiancé, Colin, played by Chris Pang, come to pick Rachel and Nick up from the airport in Singapore, and they go to this outdoor street food market, which is called a hawker center, and it looks super fun. And at each booth, Nick is speaking different languages, and you can tell Rachel is kind of noticing that she didn't know much about him. Like, she keeps learning these new things about him. And Araminta, who I think her nickname is Minty, asks Rachel to come to her bachelorette party, and she says yes. And it's very cute. Araminta is very sweet to her. And she also says that this is the only time she can remember seeing Nick this happy.
Although I will say, I was thinking about us introverts in this moment and how this would be my worst nightmare if I was on a trip, my first like international trip with my boyfriend. And a girl that I just met asked me to then spend the whole weekend on her bachelorette trip that weekend.
Worst nightmare, for sure.
Worst nightmare. And she's just like, yeah, I would love to. And I was like, not an ounce of conflict in her voice. Like, she's happy to go.
Yeah, I think she's an extrovert.
She's not like us. And then we see Astrid, Nick's cousin, who's getting home from her shopping spree. And you can tell she has this kind of routine with people that work for her, like their staff that they have at their apartment. And when she walks in, they take all of her shopping bags and hide them around the house. And then we see Astrid talking to her husband, and she tells him that he'll like Rachel, and he says, why? Is she a commoner like me? And then he tells her, I thought I caught the maids trying to hide a pair of Jimmy Choos behind the dryer, which I think is kind of funny that he knows all the tricks.
Yeah.
And then he says she doesn't need to hide the things that she buys because everyone knows that she wears the money pants in this family. But at this point, he doesn't seem upset about it. I actually really liked him in this scene because I was like, oh, he's trying to tell her, like, don't worry about it. It doesn't, like, invalidate me. My opinion changes on this guy later, but I really, really liked him in the beginning. And then we see that she got him a nice watch to celebrate the launch of his startup. And you can tell, at least with the gift, he's a little bit uncomfy that she's spending a lot of money on him specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was a nice gesture.
And then Rachel meets up with her college friend, Paik Lin, who is Awkwafina, at Paik Lin's family's house. And it's huge, and it's so gold in the house. And Paik Lin's mom says that it was inspired by the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. And I think Paik Lin makes a comment and says, and also Donald Trump's bathroom.
She does. I laughed at that part.
And they have this very elaborate lunch to thank Rachel for being Paik Lin's friend. Paik Lin's dad is played by Ken Jeong, who's a comedian and actor. You've seen him before. He's really well known for The Hangover, I think. And he's so funny. And when his daughters ask if they can be excused, he says they have to finish their food because there are children starving in America. And he points to Rachel and he says, see, look at her. She's American. So skinny. And I think he says, do you want to look like her? And the little girls are like, no.
Yeah, I thought this was really funny.
So cute. Her family is so welcoming with Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be important to see the contrast with Nick's family.
Totally. When she's at this lunch, Rachel tells them that the guy she's seeing is Nick Young, and everybody freaks out. And they tell her that Nick's family are the biggest developers in Asia and that Colin and Araminta's wedding is the wedding of the century. And she's like bewildered by this news because she had no idea that they were going to know who he was. And then they tell her that she can't go to Nick's grandma's house in the dress that she picked out with her mom, which is like this cute little red dress that she's wearing to the lunch. And Paik says it's because they're not just rich, they're crazy rich. And so she picks out a nicer dress and heels for Rachel to wear.
I thought it was funny in this scene because Paik Lin says, you can't go looking like Sebastian from The Little Mermaid. And I just thought that was funny because she's Scuttle in the new Little Mermaid now.
I know. I thought that was funny too.
It's
Well,
cute.
foreshadowing.
So Paquelin drives to Nick's family's house, and it's gorgeous. And Paquelin says it's $200 million worth of real estate. And when Nick walks outside, Paquelin says, "Damn, Rachel, it's like he's the Asian bachelor." She's just the great comic relief in this movie.
Yeah.
And then Nick invites Paquelin inside, and she pulls a cocktail dress out of her trunk to change into and heels, because she's in these pajamas beforehand, like these silk pajama looking things. And I just loved that the garment bags in her trunk are labeled clubbing, cocktail, and walk of shame.
Yeah. So they go into the house and it's insane. It's decorated to the nines. There's a band, there are chefs, there's lots of people mingling everywhere. And also the dress code of Rachel's new dress is definitely way more appropriate than the red dress she was originally going to wear, which again just makes me go, Nick, he's wearing a suit. Like, why would you not say this is the dress code at a minimum?
I'm so annoyed at him. I'm so annoyed at this point.
Anyway, so Nick brings Rachel into the kitchen to meet his mom, Eleanor, for the first time. And Nick is trying to tell his mom all about Rachel, but you can tell she doesn't seem super interested. She kind of keeps turning away to do other things while she's responding. And this happens especially after Rachel says that her mom didn't go to college and her dad passed away, either when she was a baby or before she was born, I can't remember. And when they walk away from Eleanor, Rachel says, "Okay, she hates me." So again, Rachel is us. Like, Rachel can read the room of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it just makes me sad that that Eleanor is immediately standoffish.
Mm-hmm.
But at the party, Rachel meets Nick's other family members, including Astrid, who she's met before, question mark?
Yeah, there's a part on the plane where she's like, "Oh, I love Astrid," when Nick is talking about his cousins.
Okay.
And then when they see each other in this part, she's like, "Oh, it's so good to see a familiar face," or something like that.
Okay, I totally missed that. And then back at the party, Rachel meets Nick's other family members, including Astrid, who she's actually met before. And everyone is asking about what her family does. So this is where we get the impression that, like, the expectation is that Nick's girlfriend comes from a really wealthy or famous family. And while she's meeting everybody, she accidentally calls the nanny Amma, thinking that that's Nick's grandma, because that's what they would call his grandma.
Secondhand embarrassment, for sure.
I know.
Also, let's just go back to the Nick thing. He just hasn't prepared her at all. At this point, I'm so annoyed. If she had shown up in her original dress, she would have been mortified.
I know.
And that's just setting her up for failure. I don't understand. And in this scene, Astrid says something like, "Are you sure she's ready to be thrown to the wolves?" or something like that. Or, "Are you going to just throw her to the wolves?" And he's like, "Rachel's a New Yorker. She can handle herself." But still, I'm like, are you dumb?
Dude, and it's like, it's your sole responsibility, because it's not like you have a bunch of mutual friends that know your family. Like, she had no idea what she was getting into. Yeah, it makes me mad.
Mm-hmm.
I would kill him.
I would commit a crime. I would go straight to jail.
I went straight to jail.
Astrid brings her husband food at the party, and while he's away getting a fork, she sees a text that says, "The bed feels empty without you in it."
I'm so mad. I liked him. Like, I actually really liked him until this. Like, the two of them loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so surprised when this happened and mad.
Me too.
Hate. And it just paints his reactions to her from the first scene that we saw them in a totally different light, knowing that this was going on.
Yeah. And I know that we're shitting on Nick, but Nick is not that problematic. I think he's just clueless.
Mm-hmm.
But this, hate.
Yeah, I think his name is Michael. Michael is the villain.
Michael, villain, for sure.
So then Nick goes up to change because I think Rachel spills a drink on him. And Nick's mom comes up, and while he's changing, they're hanging out, and she says they're all really disappointed that he hasn't moved home yet. So this is the first time I think that we learn that Nick was supposed to move home the previous year, and he says he's just not ready to yet. And then she says she's glad that she got to meet Rachel, and he says, "I thought you'd be glad the first girl I brought home is a Chinese professor." And Eleanor says, "Chinese American."
And then we meet Oliver, Nick's far-removed cousin, who tells Rachel that Nick is his grandma's favorite and is in line to inherit everything. Then Nick introduces Rachel to his grandma, who is the real Amma, and it goes well, and it seems actually very cute. They get along well.
And while this is happening, Eleanor and her friend Jacqueline are watching them, and Jacqueline says that Nick seems different now. And Eleanor says when children are away from home too long, they forget who they are. So again, we're just getting more and more clues that Eleanor is like frustrated that Nick hasn't come home yet. She thinks Rachel has changed him. She doesn't like her, etc. And so then the next day are the bachelor and bachelorette parties for the couple. And Rachel shows up wearing white, which I hate.
I didn't even notice.
Okay, yeah. The bride is not wearing white, so it's just obviously not a thing, and it doesn't matter. But I was like, bold move for an American girl to show up to somebody else's bachelorette party in like a white dress.
Yeah, because if anything, even if it's not a problem in Singapore, Rachel
would know that.
She would know that Americans don't do that, so she would not show up in white. It's very weird.
Yeah, weird costuming choice, I guess. And then at the party, she meets Amanda, who she learns is the Youngs' family friend and their lawyer.
And then Bernard, or Bernard, I think they pronounce it, is Colin's douchey friend, who's played by Jimmy O. Yang, who is also in a lot of things. And he planned the bachelor party on a huge boat in the middle of the ocean, and they have to take this helicopter to get to it. It's very wild. And Nick's cousin Eddie asks what Rachel brings to the table, since everyone else's spouses come from money. And cousin Alistair says, small tits. And this makes Nick very upset, and he wants to fight him.
Understandably.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see Araminta take the girls to her family's resort island where they have an all-paid shopping spree. And she's hanging out mostly with Amanda, the Young's family friend, who is being really nice to her at this point.
And then we see Colin and Nick on a smaller island alone, and they're hanging out and they're drinking beer because Colin didn't like the big party. It was definitely Bernard's thing where he didn't even plan it with Colin in mind and what Colin would like to do, which I hate.
I know.
So they're just sitting and chatting, and then Nick shows Colin the engagement ring that he brought for Rachel. And Colin is happy for Nick, but he's concerned because Nick is supposed to move home and Rachel loves her job in New York. He also says Rachel's life is going to be a struggle if they get married because everyone adores Nick so much, which I don't think I really understand.
I didn't at first either, but I think the point of this is similar to like, if you think about the royal family, which maybe this is a bad example, but like people have such an affinity for the royal family, even if they didn't like love Prince Harry. I feel like he kind of belonged to England. And then when he started dating Meghan, I feel like people were really quick, especially in England and the English press, were very quick to criticize her. I think because they had like an ownership over him, is what I think he means by that. Like their family's really famous. The public loves him. His grandma loves him. Everybody wants the best for him and wants him to do certain things. And so then for him to decide to marry Rachel would be hardest on Rachel.
I see, because people would already just be judging her poorly.
I think so. I think that's what he's trying to say. And then over at the bachelorette party, Amanda tells Rachel that Nick was supposed to come back a year ago to take over the family business, and she mentions that they used to date. So this is where we kind of turn on Amanda, in my opinion, as the audience. We don't like her anymore. And she also makes a comment that Nick's mom always wanted the two of them to end up together, which I think really does it for Rachel.
Snake move.
And
you can tell that both Nick and Rachel are feeling pretty down after their conversations. Rachel actually walks out of the massage with Amanda, and she overhears the other girls saying mean things about her. And Astrid finds her upset and walks back to the room with her. And in Rachel's room, there's writing on the windows that call her a gold-digging bitch and a gutted fish on her bed. And I think the writing was done with blood, or at least it was made to look that way. It was really gross. And Rachel says that she's not going to call security or make a scene because she doesn't want to give them the satisfaction. So after they clean up the room, Astrid and Rachel go to the beach for the bachelorette party. I do have to say that Araminta is not involved in any of the mean girl behavior. And Astrid says something like, yeah, I think she just makes excuses for her friends because they've been her friends since childhood. So she doesn't really see how bad they are. And while they're having this heart-to-heart, Astrid tells Rachel about Michael's affair.
then the next day, Rachel finally gets mad at Nick because she says she feels like a villain in a soap opera. And she tells him about the fish, and she's so upset that he didn't tell her about any of this, his family, how people would react to her. After she says that she's so upset, Nick tells her that he loves who he is with her because she doesn't care about who his family is. And he didn't tell her because he really didn't want anything to change between them. Eye roll.
Still not a good reason.
Eye roll. Yeah, you have to tell her.
But I'm glad she confronted him about it, at least.
Yeah.
She's a very strong character, I think. So then they go make dumplings with Nick's family, and Rachel is able to bond with everyone. And she finds out that Eleanor and her husband met at Cambridge, and she withdrew from college once they got married. And in this part, Rachel is talking to Eleanor about her ring. This is how the conversation comes up. So we see she has this gorgeous emerald wedding ring, and that will come back later, so that's important. Eleanor tells Rachel that the house and their life didn't happen because she pursued her passion like Rachel. It was because they put their family first. And earlier when she first met Rachel in the kitchen, she said that pursuing your passion is very American. So we can see this is just how she truly feels, is that you have passion and then you have duty, and they can't coexist.
Mm-hmm. At the end of this dumpling making session, Alma shows up and tells Rachel that the shape of her nose is very auspicious. And you can tell this bothers Eleanor. Basically, you can tell that Alma really likes Rachel, and I think that's an extension of how much she loves Nick. And all of this bothers Eleanor.
And after lunch, Eleanor tells Rachel that Nick's grandmother didn't approve of her husband marrying Eleanor because she didn't have good family connections. And she tells Rachel that Alma had a right to be concerned because she wasn't prepared for the work and sacrifice their family would take. And she tells Rachel that having been through it all, she knows this much: Rachel will never be enough.
This is so sad because when she started this speech, I thought that she was maybe going to relate to Rachel.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like they had a similar story, but she just completely turns it on its head and is like, I had to go through this, so I know that you're not enough to go through this. And it just so mean.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So then in the car, we find out that Nick's mom let his grandma, Alma, raise him so that Nick would be the favorite because she thought it would be better for the whole family, which Rachel obviously thinks is really interesting.
She's like, oh, Alma doesn't like me and doesn't like Nick's father's choice to marry me. So what I'm going to do is make her raise Nick so that he's the favorite, so that our family ends up on the better end of this whole thing.
Yeah, like give her my son so that he will be in her favor and inherit everything, I guess, because we're not going to.
Yeah, interesting. So then Rachel is hanging out with Paik Lin and tells her what Eleanor said. And she tells Paik Lin that she's thinking of skipping the wedding. But Paik Lin says she needs to be focused on getting Eleanor to respect her, not like her. And this is where everything changes.
So then Oliver and Paik Lin give Rachel a makeover to help prep her for standing up to Eleanor. And also Paik Lin's whole family is there and helps her like try on the dresses and pick them out and give their opinions. It's really funny.
During this scene, the song Material Girl is playing in Cantonese, and it's so good.
I didn't realize that. That's really cute.
Yeah. And Paik Lin drives Rachel to the wedding, and she is stunning. She's wearing this blue tulle dress. I think it's tulle. It's so gorgeous. Everyone wants to take photos of her instead of the other girls. And she skips all the girls in line and tells Amanda she's in her way.
Love this. Meanwhile, we see Astrid and Michael in the car on the way to the wedding. And Michael says that he's going to have to miss their son's birthday for a trip. This is where Astrid admits that she knows he's having an affair, but that she wants to get through the wedding and doesn't want to make a scene. And Michael is immediately furious that all she cares about is not making a scene, or I should say all he thinks that she cares about is not making a scene at the wedding. He says, you find out I'm having an affair with another woman and you don't want to make a scene. And he says he's tired of just being lucky to be with the richest, prettiest girl in the room. And all of this just tells me that he really resents her. And he makes a comment that nothing he does ever matters, not even having an affair. And he gets out of the car and leaves while she's crying. And it just makes me so mad at him because I'm like, dude, this is not the point. I feel bad for him a little bit, a tiny bit, because I'm sure it is hard to be with somebody that is famous and rich and has everything they could ever need and doesn't need anything from you. But also he just is such a baby and it makes me hate him.
Yeah, it's get over it, dude.
Yeah.
And it doesn't justify having an affair.
No.
And then you're getting mad at her that her reaction to your affair is not big enough.
Yeah.
Go away.
Hate.
At the wedding, Rachel walks up to Eleanor, and I love this because she's acting just like Eleanor. there's a cold politeness where on the surface it seems very polite, but there's no warmth to it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Eleanor says that their row is already full, so she can't sit with them. So Rachel sits with the princess who requested her own row. And she brings up an article that the princess wrote. They start having a conversation about economics. And then Amma, Nick's grandma, walks in with Astrid.
Which is really cute because I think Astrid thanks her because they make a comment that Amma never comes to this type of thing. And then you see Astrid say, like, thank you for coming with me. So you can tell after Michael bailed, that's who she called, which I thought was sweet.
Yeah.
And then Nick and Colin can kind of peek out from where the groom and the groomsmen are standing. And they see that Rachel is sitting at the front with the princess. I think Nick makes a comment right before this that Rachel's probably sitting in the back. And Colin says, I think you've got a fighter. Which I thought was so cute. And then the wedding starts, and throughout the entire wedding, Nick and Rachel just look at each other the whole time, and Rachel's crying, and you see that Nick's mom, Eleanor, notices, and for like 1 second, it seems like she softens.
I agree. And this wedding is so gorgeous and wild. It's
Wild.
just, I mean, I think they said in the movie that they spent $40 million on it or something crazy like that. The singer is singing Can't Help Falling in Love. And when she sings Like a River Flows Surely to the Sea, the aisle fills up with water and then Araminta walks through it down the aisle. It is gorgeous. Very unique.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's party time at the Gardens by the Bay, which I've been there.
Wow.
And it's really interesting. They have these big, I think they're called super trees. They're like those big pink towers and they change colors. And I don't know if you noticed it in the movie, but it looked gorgeous. It was a great place to have a wedding reception.
Cool.
And during a slow song, someone tells Rachel and Nick that Nick's grandma wants to talk to them. And so they go up to her and she says that she won't allow Rachel to ruin Nick with her ambition. And Eleanor is also there and says that she hired a private investigator. And the PI said that Rachel's dad didn't die. Her mom actually cheated on her husband and got pregnant from someone else and moved to America. And Eleanor says that they can't have this in their family. And Rachel says, I don't want any part of your family. And she runs away crying. And Nick runs after her, but he can't find her in the crowd.
And so she goes to Pake Lynn's to sleep for the night, and she ends up spending the next couple of days there in bed, not eating, not talking to anyone. Meanwhile, we see that Nick is leaving her voicemails.
And then Rachel's mom shows up to Pake Lynn's to see Rachel, and she gets Rachel to finally eat and drink. And Rachel asks why she never told her the real story about her father. And her mom says that her husband was abusive, but she fell in love with her best friend and schoolmate and got pregnant, so she ran away to America. She's never reconnected with the man she loves because she's so scared her husband would find her and Rachel. And her mom also tells her that Nick is the one who called her and brought her to Singapore. And she says Rachel should at least talk to him before they go home.
And so she does. Rachel meets up with Nick and he apologizes for everything. He actually says he's done making excuses for his family and he gets out the ring and asks her to marry him. And he says he'll leave all of this behind so they can start a new life together in New York. And then we don't see what she says.
We're on the edge of our seats at this point.
I know.
And then we see Eleanor go to a mahjong house to meet Rachel. And Rachel asks Eleanor why she doesn't like her and didn't from the moment she got there. And Eleanor says that Americans only think about their own happiness and they don't know how to build things that last. Rachel tells Eleanor that Nick proposed and said he'd walk away from his family for good. And then she says, but I turned him down because there's no way to win. You made sure of that. Because basically, if he chooses Rachel, he loses his family. And if he chooses his family, he'll spend his life resenting them. So I think Eleanor says, so you chose for him. And she says she loves Nick so much that she can't let him lose his mom again.
And I love this part because then she tells Eleanor that one day when Nick marries another lucky girl and Eleanor is playing with her grandkids, she wants Eleanor to remember that it was because of her, a poor girl raised by a single mother. And then she wins mahjong and gets up. And her mom gets up across the room and her mom gives Eleanor a stern look and they both walk out together.
I love her mom.
I love her mom too. And I love that Rachel says this because like you can tell she means it. And it's just like heart-wrenching that she's thinking about this guy that she wants to marry marrying someone else one day because of his mother and how she wants his mom to remember this moment. It's tough.
Yeah. And then we see Astrid and Michael fight as he's packing. And she says that the real problem with their marriage isn't her family's money. It's because Michael is a coward that gave up on them. And she says it's not her job to make him feel like a man. I can't make you something you're not. Burn. Mic drop.
Burn. Yeah.
And then she puts on the earrings that she bought at the beginning of the movie.
And you see a little smile. Like, you can tell she's just like, yeah, okay. I said my piece. I'm going to wear the things that I love that I bought with my money. And I'm going to leave.
Yeah, love that for her.
And then we see Eleanor show up at Nick's door.
But we don't see what she says. And this part I thought was really interesting. Coldplay's Yellow is playing in Mandarin. And I didn't realize how important this was and how hard it was to get this song in the movie, but it has an interesting backstory. So it was really important to the director, John M. Chu, that this song was in the movie, and the studio was worried about it evoking negative stereotypes. But John Chu convinced them otherwise and said to trust him, and he said, we're going to own that term. And originally, Coldplay rejected it being in the movie, but the director wrote the band a letter saying, the word yellow has always had a negative connotation in my life until I heard your song. And then the letter goes on to talk about how the song described the color in the most beautiful ways and could give a whole generation of Asian Americans and others the same sense of pride that he got when he heard the song. And I loved that.
That makes me want to cry.
I know.
That's really cool.
I know. It's very important that the song did make the movie. And why it did is because he sent that letter. Because the band emailed back within an hour, apparently, granting permission to use the song. And then the Mandarin version is sung by Catherine Ho, who is a Chinese-American YouTuber and contestant on The Voice.
Aw, I love that.
Yeah, it's a great story.
That's so cool.
And you can read the full letter online that John Chu wrote to Coldplay, and I highly recommend reading it.
So then at the end of the movie, we see Rachel and her mom board their flight home in economy. And then Nick runs onto the plane after them, and he says he's flying back to New York with her. And as he's talking to her, he's explaining what he always imagined proposing to her would be like where it would be, how it would feel. But then he goes up to her on the plane and proposes right there, this time with his mother's ring, the same ring that Eleanor made a comment about during the dumpling making scene. And this tells her that Eleanor approves, which now us as the audience know that Eleanor going to Nick's house and showing up at his door was her going to give her approval. And Rachel says yes, and they kiss, and the whole plane cheers. It's so cute.
I love it. It's so cute. And then he says he was thinking about staying one more night, so they actually get off the plane, and he takes her to a huge surprise engagement party on top of Marina Bay Sands, which is this iconic hotel in Singapore, and it has this boat at the very top of the hotel. And Nick's whole family is there, and so is Paik Lin and her family. And then Rachel sees Eleanor across the room, who nods at her. And then there's fireworks, and then the credits play, and it's just such a good ending.
Loved it. Loved the party, loved the proposal. So happy for Rachel.
Yeah, me too.
I did not know there was a credits scene.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah, so during the credits while they're playing, we see a scene where Astrid meets eyes with a handsome man who's played by Harry Shum Jr. from Glee at the engagement party, and they smile at each other.
Cute.
And I think that's supposed to lead us into movie 2.
Yes.
So if you've read the books, you probably know who he is, but we don't.
Oh my gosh, yes. The second movie is going to be Astrid. That's what I want.
I would love that.
Would love. Oh, I hope they do that. Well, my fingers are crossed.
Yeah, me too. So glad we watched this movie. It was so good.
Me too. I'm so happy I actually got to watch the whole thing. I like it so much. I'm definitely going to watch it again.
Yeah, maybe you'll start watching it annually like I do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for listening.
If you liked this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and a good review wherever you're listening to podcasts. It means a lot to us to hear from you guys.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.